You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Absolutely. Without further ado, we'd like to welcome Nick Kalikas from betonfighting.com. You can also find him on Twitter at FightOdds. He's going to talk to us all about how you set the lines for fights and hopefully make a few predictions as well tonight. So, Nick, how are you doing?
Great, guys. Appreciate the invite.
No, it's our pleasure.
What do you... Actually, let me rephrase that. What were the longest odds you've ever seen on an MMA fight?
Ooh, man. Probably... this is off the top of my head. But the one that sticks out, I think, the most would be Nogueira versus Sokoju. In the original, obviously, their only meeting way back in Pride. I believe Nogueira was around a 2,400 favorite.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, actually, let's take the listeners through how the lines are set on a fight. What all goes into it, and how do you come up with the numbers?
Well, there's a lot that goes into obviously setting a line. And I've been doing it now for 7-8 years, so I got my own little system I developed. But a lot of it's honestly doing your homework, studying film, studying the fighters, gathering information, and trying to set a number that's going to be safe for the sports books. Something that's especially initially going to try to draw two-way actions with, of course, the line movement. And then obviously as you get closer to fight day, you want to put the certain sides out there that you believe are going to win. Right. But as far as actually making the number, like I said, you just got to do your homework, honestly.
Now, I do understand that, at least as far as Vegas is concerned, I'm not saying this is the same way for your business, but I know the idea is to get as much money coming in on both sides so that in the end there's like a margin of profit. So obviously there is some factor in setting a longer on an underdog just to get more people to bet on him.
Yeah, definitely. There's numbers out there that, we put out trying to attract action on certain sides that we want. So that is basically a myth that if people think that we're going to get two-way action on every single fight, that's not true. You're going to be lopsided sometimes, and, you're going to take some wins and you're going to take some losses as well. But we definitely try to put the books on certain sides.
Right. And I'm sure, like, for George St. Pierre, for example, you probably get almost every bet on George.
I'm sorry?
Like with GSP, you probably get heavy betting on George in every fight.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think George St. Pierre, you could put Anderson Silva in that category. Now we're going to have to put John Jones in that category as well. Look, he's opened a 475 favorite against Rashad Evans, so you won't see that line with anybody else. You know what I mean? Jones is just that much of a stud as well. So guys like that, yeah, definitely. It's kind of crazy. I mean, the hype on them, we're always going to have to put them, huge favorites. Now, there's interesting matchups and super fights and whatnot that could change, and lines will be a little tighter. But in most cases, when they're defending their belts, you'll see a huge line.
Right. So basically, a dominant champion's going to draw a bigger line, and somebody who's on a good streak and has had a lot of wins over top guys is going to draw a bigger line as well then.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, you got to take the public opinion in consideration a lot. There's several occasions that I open a line that I actually think the underdog's going to win and has a legit shot to win. But I open the other side a favorite because I know that's where the majority of the action is going to come in. And again, you want to be a little bit safer for the sports book. So if I'm wrong, we don't get slammed too much. But at the same time, if I'm right, it's going to be a good day because they're laying that juice a lot of times. So
I'm actually curious as to what the latest line is on the super fight between Brock Lesnar and Alistair Overeem.
The line on Alistair Overeem and Brock right now, let me check it out for you.
Because you were talking about super fights earlier, and it just piqued my interest. I'm like, I wonder if Overeem is still a heavy favorite.
Actually, he is. He's at minus 155. The comeback is plus 115 on Brock, so Brock's still the dog. But again, it's a close fight. Anything under 200, in my opinion, is a really competitive fight.
Now, what happens if a fighter wins a fight but then fails the drug test? What happens then?
Everything for the sports books, this is pretty much a standard rule across the board. And I'm glad you brought that up because there's a lot of confusion when stuff like that happens or when things get overturned by the commission. Whatever is announced that night by the athletic commission is how the fight is scored. So if the ring announcer announces, okay, this guy by unanimous decision, and then 2 weeks later a fighter fails a drug test, it comes out, and the fight gets overturned, it doesn't matter. That night, the guy won the fight. That's how it's graded. And it's been a consistent rule. So, I mean, it's worked against the books. It's worked for them. So it doesn't matter. It's just a consistent rule that seems to be fair for everybody. So it's that night, whatever's decided that night, that's how it's graded.
Now, has anyone ever successfully picked a draw in MMA? Because that is such a rare thing right now. And we got this weekend coming up with Gray Maynard and Frankie Edgar. I mean, is anyone picking a draw again?
Sure. I think you see action on every draw line now. If there's a draw line up at a sports book, you'll see action on it for sure. Because people just there's such high odds that people just take shots at it. You know what I mean? A lot of times they don't think it's going to happen, but if it's such a crazy number, they'll throw $25, $50 on it and see what happens. So yeah, definitely there's people that have made money on the draw lines. But at the same time, the sports books are getting bet on the other options. So even if somebody hits a draw line, they're covering their butts by everybody else losing the other bets. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking when I was at UFC 124 with Stevie and they announced the draw, we're like, who the hell scored it like that?
I'll tell you what, that's one of the hardest things about MMA betting these days is the judging. Wow. I mean, it's a head scratcher sometimes. I mean, these guys, a lot of the fans, a lot of the media can score fights better than the judges.
So
Absolutely.
obviously Rampage was just trying to stir things up when he said it was a Spygate. But do you think in this business that there really is some amount of spying going on?
Not really like that. I mean, I think they kind of blew all that out of proportion. But at the same time, I think there are fighters that do talk to other media members and, you know, maybe give some neutral information or leak out some information that maybe you shouldn't. Yeah, I think there's a lot of that does go on.
Yeah, I mean,
that's kind of what you're asking.
Sometimes it seems like people have little insider information, like they might know that somebody sprained an ankle in training, and the public doesn't necessarily know that.
Well, for me, if I find something like that, honestly, I got to keep my mouth shut. I mean, I'm not going to go out there and say, hey, I'm hearing this, I'm hearing that, because, you know, I don't want it to affect a line at all. So I'm not going to tell, you know, if people got to trust you with information too. So, yeah. And at the same time, it doesn't matter because a lot of these fights injured,
That's
you know,
true.
very often too. And a lot of times I've made this mistake in the past that I've taken some information possibly that's come in and I let it reflect on the line. And the fight pretty much still unfolded how it normally would, even with an injured fighter, right? So you learn from your mistakes, and like I said, as you go to. So I have to, you know, use sometimes information that you get. It depends on the injury. There's been fighters that I know that have been cut before that are going in with, you know, with some maybe minor cuts that people don't realize they've been busted open recently. I mean, like I said, I've heard a lot of different information, and you just got to keep a lot of it to yourself. I don't want to, you know, leak it out to anybody. Nothing. Because you don't want to.
Let's go more recently. Let's go more recently to when Jake Shields lost his father. Did that affect the lines at all?
Well, there's two ways you could play that, though. I mean, there's more motivation possibly for Shields, you know, on one end, and on the other end, you know, where's he going to be mentally, obviously, with a big loss like that. And after the fact, I mean, we've seen him. Nobody's ever beat Jake Shields like that, so you could say, okay, it did affect him. But you know what? Did it really affect him? Do we really know that that's why, you know, he performed that way? I'm not sure. I mean, it seems like he did. So I think that it really depends on how your thought is. You know what I mean? There's certain people out there that probably thought, hey, you know what? His father just passed. I don't think his head's going to be right. I'm going to go out there and bet the dog. I think there was a lot of that going on. At the same time, I think there was a lot of people saying, you know what? He's going to be even more motivated than ever. I'm going to go bet the favorite. He's going to win his fight. So it kind of works both ways, you know? Sometimes
you can't tell whether a fighter's motivation is the problem or if it's a change in their diet or the way they train. Because I know in Shields' case, he went to a vegan diet, and a lot of people think the diet might have affected his performance.
Yeah, I've heard that before too. And, you know, a lot of these fighters are starting to switch over to the vegan diets. And those are all factors. You know, we're not sure how they're going to perform. Some perform better, some perform worse. It just depends. And again, I'm not scientifically, you can't prove a lot of that stuff, or I don't know a lot of that stuff. So you can't let a lot of that stuff affect the odds, I think.
I agree.
Who wants to KO